and it's December 26th, 2003, day after Christmas, and I'm interviewing my grandparents, Poppie and Grandma, or Wilbert and Geraldine.
My mother's name was Bertha Weiss, and she married my father, whose name was Clarence Richard. My grandparents, my grandmother came from Germany. That was Marie Weiss, and grandpa was born in Switzerland, and his name was Conrad. And they met over there and moved to the United States.
You had the story about how you got that name Wilbert, too. Right?
Yes, I do. It's because it's an unusual name. But my mother's name is Bertha. My father's name was William. So when I was born, they took a part of each name, a part of Will. Dad was always called Will. And my mother's name, she was Bertha, and she was always called Bert. So they took the two nicknames, Will, Bert, put them together, and that is me.
Very good.
It's been that way.
Where were you both born?
Geri was born in Buffalo, New York, and I was born in Syracuse, New York.
Okay. And Graham talked about her earliest relatives that she's aware of. How about you?
I have some names that I can't spell very well. I can read them to you. My mother, that was a letterman, and my grandmother was a Reschlau, and she married Charles Letterman. And they had 3 or 4 children. I'm not even sure exactly which, but they had at least 2 girls and one boy. Bertha, my mother, her sister Frida, and their brother John. Those are the only ones that I can recall that she ever had. My mother and Dad met at a shoe factory where they both worked. My dad was in charge of keeping the machines operating. He was a machinist. And my mother was one of the people who sewed soles and so forth on shoes. It was a Gray shoe factory. They married and had a total of 8 children, of which I'm the second oldest. I was born January 9th, 1916. After the first child they had was Charles. He died early, at about the age of 6, as I recall. And then there were other kids that following me, right down through till a total of 8 of us.
And Grandma Hanover, your mother, she did some work too, is that right? Or?
Well, she worked at
Remington
Typewriter in Syracuse.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the influences that your parents had on you? Any strong messages that they conveyed that you thought were important?
Well, I can tell you that my father was very strict.
Yeah.
And mother was a typical German housewife.
Yeah.
Never worked outside the house, but raised the kids. And did a good job, yeah, I think she did, but it was my father who was strict and I think taught us the values of good morals and stuff like that.
Yeah, with all those children and times being what they were, he didn't have a lot of times for hobbies, as I understand it. You know, he pretty much worked and kept the house up and took care of his family.
Exactly right.
But I know Grandma Hanover had some hobbies that she had. She did, what was crochet?
Crochet, knitting, tatting.
Now, when you were 12, your mom remarried the guy I know was Grandpa Hanover, and he used to work for the railroad.
That's right.
Yeah.
New York Central.
New York Central, and I know you guys used to play cards, and that was one of the things that you used to do for enjoyment. Anything else that you can tell me about him?
Well, he was a Boilermaker.
Yeah, he had one thing happen to him that might be interesting. He was working on a large locomotive one day
Inside.
and doing work inside the boiler, which he was a boilermaker. And somebody accidentally turned the valve and turned the steam on.
Oh, no.
And
Didn't know he was in
he
there.
didn't realize he
My
was
goodness.
there. And he was hospitalized, but he eventually came out of it okay without any serious scars. Because I don't know whether I told you or not, I left school, graduated in 1934, went to work for the House of Hathaway Bakery Company as a door-to-door driver salesman, delivering bread, cakes, pies, that sort of stuff. And the Kitsch family was one of my customers. And she mentioned one day that her husband was looking for a new salesman and suggested that I go down to the Coca-Cola plant and talk with him. I did. Of course, that was a real good introduction when his wife says, you know,
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to send somebody down for you to interview. And Bud hired me. He was general manager of the plants at that time. And I went to work for Bud as a driver salesman. And over the years, he helped me get ahead. He sent me to schools in Atlanta and for management training. Made me a route supervisor and then a route manager, an assistant manager of the Syracuse operation. And when we had built a new plant in Auburn, New York, he recommended me as the manager of that plant. And I did go to Auburn, manage that plant until, I don't even know, I think it was 1955 when they brought me into Syracuse, made some changes in personnel, and Bud Kitsch, who had been general manager, went into general sales manager for all of the plants in the area that were owned by Associated. And I was named manager of the Syracuse plant, I guess I said, in 1955, that's leaving Auburn. Then we had a further promotion where I became general manager in addition to the
You won
Syracuse.
a trip around the world, or at least to the Asian part of the world, as a reward for being one of the top salespeople. Is that right?
That is correct, and it was a trip of our choice. It was a trip around the world, and we had an opportunity to name wherever we wanted to go. We decided that we'd go someplace that was completely different from ours, so
Yeah.
we picked the Orient. We went over there, Hong Kong,
Yeah. Went to Hawaii, stopped off in Hawaii and
Yeah.
Hong Kong, and
Tahiti?
Japan was there as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
and Tokyo, and Australia. We went to Sydney, Australia.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And Tahiti.
Yeah.
So we've been around that part of the world pretty good.
No, I remember some of my earlier memories are of you took me for a ride on a Coke truck once, and that was quite exciting for me to be in that Coca-Cola truck, and
Yeah.
you know, big shifters and everything that I wasn't used to, so that was fun.
Well, your mother had some fun in some of the Coke plants too.
Oh yeah.
She used to like to get on the cases and slide down the conveyors in the plant. And she may recall those.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. How did you two meet?
Yeah, a mutual friend introduced us, and again, a customer, a bakery customer, and introduced us, and we had dated, married,
Ralph went to school.
got, went to school. We had 2 kids, your mother and her sister, Dottie. And we've had a wonderful life together.
And you
We've traveled all over the world.
You met in
basically.
1936, and you got married in 1937,
That's
and
correct.
then probably Dot came in 1938,
Correct.
and I know my mom came in 1939.
Correct.
So It was a busy few years there, wasn't it? A lot of changes in just a short period of time.
There certainly were. There certainly were.
Where did you live when you first got married? Well, before you got married, you were in Colomer.
I was born in Syracuse, New
Yeah.
York. Then in 1929, the city of Syracuse purchased my mother's and father's home to build a road through.
Mhm.
So they decided they wanted to get out of the city, so they went out to Colomer, New York, and bought a couple of acres of land out there. I think it was more than that, but anyway, they bought some acreage and built a new home right at the peak of 1929. And you know, David, what happened in 1929.
The great crash of
Right.
October 1929. Yeah.
So, but they survived. They got the house was paid for. Fortunately, the city of Syracuse paid them cash. You know, when they sold their house, so they didn't have any financial problems getting the house paid for. And of course, that was one of the things that both my mother and dad taught all of us kids. There's a lot of wants and there's some needs in this world, but don't buy anything unless you can pay for it.
Right.
And that has been primarily our theory of life all the way through. When we built new homes, we paid outright for them.
We wouldn't buy anything
We
unless we could
wouldn't
pay
buy
cash
it.
for it.
Yeah.
That way we knew we were never going to be in debt.
Right. We brag a little bit. We purchased $200,000 motorhomes and paid cash for it. Never had
Your
any.
mother
And
and
her
her
sister don't have any worries about debts as far as we're concerned because we don't have any debts.
Right.
Everything is completely free and clear, and that was teaching of my dad and mother.
Yeah. Well, these things carry through. I'm very much the same way. No debts, and I got that from my mom, and she got that from you, and you got that from your parents. So you see how these values just trickle down through the generations.
That is true. Yeah, very true, David.
It's too bad a lot of the kids today don't have that same feeling or training.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people just live hand to mouth with a tremendous amount of debt, and it seems like that'd be very stressful for me.
It would for me.
For us.
When I go to bed at night, I want to know that I'm going to bed free and clear.
Right.
Don't have a mortgage over my head or car payment to make or any of those kind of things.
Before you got married, where were you living, Grandma?
My mother was a great one. Every year we moved to a different spot in Syracuse.
Yeah.
And
That's a lot of moving.
I don't know why, but she always liked to move. You can almost depend on the day she's going to say, well, I found another place that we're going to move to. Unfortunately, because of that, I never had a lot of close friends. I would meet friends, make friends, and a year later I'm in some other school or something or other. So I never had any really long lifetime
So the
friends.
real stability for you came after you got married. And
Absolutely.
So where'd you move into after you got married?
Well, we went from Bellevue, and then we went to
We were in Syracuse basically all the time. When we were first married, we had rented a small apartment up on the West Onondaga Street.